And we're back. I feel awful, miserable, but also refreshed. I finally crossed the line. I knew it would come crashing down like this sooner or later, having become unable to feel anything but disgust for other people. There was no way I could hope to maintain the relationships I'd had before the incident. Today's incident will definitely get back to Koji and Omi, and everyone will be convinced that Sakisaki Fuminori has had a major change of character. Honestly, I don't care anymore, and at least I probably won't be institutionalized for this. I just need to avoid acting any stranger than I already have. If this puts a rift between me and the others, good. Just thinking about the stress I'll avoid makes me feel like a weight has been lifted from my shoulders. I'm fed up with them sticking their noses into my life. It's like they don't care about... It's like they don't care that they make my gut turn just by being near me. I've been terrified of them until now, but today I struck fear into one of them. On one hand, thinking about this is a relief, but I'm not entirely without remorse for what happened. The person I just chased off with the verbal equivalent of a nuclear bomb used to be my friend Yo. Even if my senses don't believe it, my mind accepts the theory. I don't have any particular grudge against Yo herself, and I didn't want to hurt her. In retrospect, perhaps I should have just outright refused to talk to her. She was an attractive woman, and I certainly didn't think badly of her. To be honest, though, I was annoyed when Koji and Omi tried to stick us together for the fun of it. I felt like I was being toyed with, and seemed totally oblivious to the fact that she was dancing to their tune. Her cluelessness was irritating.
Oh, she loved him.
Gross. That said, I knew that none of them meant any harm. Back then, I didn't have any reason to hurt others just to get my way. If having a casual relationship with Yo would keep our circle of friends together, I was willing to make that compromise. Now, however, there's no room in my heart for the tolerance necessary to just go with the flow. If merely talking to someone is an unbearable ordeal, how can I be expected to show kindness? These ruminations have left me exhausted. I want to return to Sai as soon as possible, but thinking about the packed trains and crowded downtown streets between here and home saps my will. Catching sight of a nearby bench, I sit down, close my eyes to the horrors of the world. I can't do anything about the stink or the noise, but at least I can manage to calm my nerves enough to rest. Pass.
When I regained consciousness in the T University Hospital ward, the world was dark as it is now. I hadn't regained my sight, even though my eyes and optical nerves were fine. It must have been an after effect of the accident. Blindness was a shock, but now I know that my suffering then was nothing. After all, my sense of hearing, touch, taste, and smell were all fine at the time. The real tragedy began when my sight returned. The one small mercy was that I was able to come to terms with a terrible accident and my neurosurgery while still blind. I panicked when I first saw the nightmarish hospital and the blood-curdling shapes of the doctors and nurses, but I soon guessed the cause. It chills me to think of what might have happened if I recovered my sight along with my consciousness. Suddenly awaking in what can only be described as hell, I would have no doubt lost my mind instantly. Soon my disorder spread to the senses of touch, taste, and smell. In the human sensory structure, sight is far more powerful than any of the other senses. The taste of my food, the feel of my bed sheets, the fragrance of my get-well flowers, all became as unbearably foul as my eyes said they should be. Eventually, when the voices of the doctors became unrecognizable as human, I decided to kill myself. I didn't believe for a second that I could come to terms with this new world. At least not until I met Saya. One night, when I was trying to think of a painless way to die, I found myself succumbing to sleep. Drifting between the nightmares in my dreams and the nightmare of reality, I didn't notice her enter my room. Suddenly, there was a face staring curiously down at me from next to my bed. The face was not covered in pus, slime, or earthworm-like feelers. Gross. It had smooth white cheeks, round eyes, a lovely little nose, all things I had never expected to see again. The face was that of a girl, undeniably human and positively glowing with beauty. I sighed in admiration, savoring the first peace and joy since regaining my sight. Apparently, she had not expected such a reaction.
怖くないの？私のこと。
Looking at the clock, I saw that it was exactly 3 in the morning, not a time for a young girl to be wandering around a hospital. Even someone with no imagination would likely have thought her a ghost. I, however, wouldn't have cared if she had been a ghost. Either way, she was a godsend.
君は誰だい？なぜここに？
私はさや。パパのこと探しに来たの。
I assumed that she was the daughter of one of the night shift nurses or other patients. It was unusual but not unthinkable for such a child to be wandering around. Rather, it was the hospital security's fault for not locking the doors properly.
あなた、怖がらないんじゃつまらない。
ちょっと。
I cried, desperate to keep her from leaving. It was only after she turned around that I realized I hadn't thought of what to do next.
何？
We can pass.
Her eyes drew me into their depths, healing my soul to its core. Through the white haze clouding my mind, I struggled to form a coherent sentence.
女の子にお願いしていいことじゃないんだが、今君にしか頼めない。
What?
No longer concerned with what is that? Propriety?
Propriety?
Yeah. I let the words come pouring out of my mouth.
手を握らせてもらえないだろうか。
How bold.
He's really going for it.
Yeah, Saya first looked confused, but then smiled like she just found a new toy. Her smile was like the sun.
変な人。
And she said, well, she's still talking.
あなたが初めて。
That was a lot. Oh, there was more of that there. I thought it was just a you're strange thing. She said, holding out her slender white hand. Ever so carefully, as though catching snowflakes in my hand, I placed my palm against hers. I could clearly feel her human warmth and the softness of her delicate fingers. She was there, just beyond the palm of my hand. Thinking back on the joyful tears I shed then, I know that was the moment I was saved from my fate.
この半月の間に初めて人に触れた。人だと感じられる体に。他の人じゃダメなんだ。僕事故に遭って、その後遺症らしいんだけど、人が人の姿に見えないんだよ。
本当に不思議な人。あなたって面白い。明日の夜もまた来ていい？
She said, winding her fingers gently around mine.
あ、そりゃもういいのかい？君はそんなことをして。
大丈夫よ。夜は私のものだから。
And so our nightly rendezvous began. So I came to my room every night at 3 a.m., skillfully taking advantage of the duty nurse's shift change. I was astonished to learn that she was hiding inside the hospital.
こ
What?
れだけ広いと隠れる場所には事欠かないから。
She said, answering my surprise with a nonchalant smile. She told me that she had been living in the suburbs with her father, a doctor teaching at the hospital, but had found herself all alone when one day he stopped coming home. After tiring of waiting for her father at home, Saya decided one night to sneak into the hospital where she'd lived for over 2 months while searching for his whereabouts.
I hope he lived close to the hospital.
いいの。勉強は全部パパに教えてもらったから。さやはとっても頭がいいんだよ。
She was a strange girl. While she looked and talked like an innocent child, she also had the ability to hide from adults and feed herself. Perhaps her lack of common sense was due to her youth, but the sharp intelligence and deep knowledge she periodically exhibited were not those of a child. But such minor things were of no concern to me. To me, Saya was the only other human in a world gone mad. Her existence meant far more to me than the standards of society.
Oh my goodness.
なくないのか？
Our main character is an idiot.
That reminds me of the people that are like, oh, well, you know, she might be 13, but she acts way beyond her years.
Yeah.
全然平気。ここにいれば食べるものにも不自由しないし、パパのうちに一人ぼっちでいるよりもずっと楽しいよ。
You don't have to worry about finding food here. I didn't know hospitals were stocked full of, you know, normal eating food.
Well, they have, like, cafeterias.
Well, I guess.
入院してる患者さんたちのうち、ちょっと精神的に参ってそうな人を事前にチェックしといてね。
So I continued, grinning mischievously.
時々部屋に真夜中に忍び込んで脅かしたりするの。その人が大騒ぎしても
That sounds terrible.
I kind of like that.
I would not want to be friends with somebody that did that.
I kind of like
結
that.
局は悪いよってことで片付けられちゃうし。
Pass.
Her confession reminded me that the hospital was famous for its ghost stories. Oh, wow. Who could have imagined that there was actually a real girl impishly roaming the hallways, these hallways?
じゃあ僕も最初はそのつもりで。
Terrible.
うん。ごめんね。怒った。
While her pranks were hardly praiseworthy, I couldn't bring myself to scold her for the very thing that had brought us together.
最後
wow.
その方が楽しい。
We're like best friends forever.
Nice bed. I like his bed.
Yeah.
Man, that's nice.
At IKEA.
Just wrap up in the blankets.
With extreme care, I was able to conceal my sensory disorder. It was glaringly obvious that the doctors had no way to cure me, and the fact that I had just undergone a new treatment clearly still in the trial and error stage made it even more cautious. How much interest would the doctors show in a patient exhibiting such an unusual side effect? As a medical student, it was easy for me to imagine the clinical coldness of the researchers. For the sake of my dignity, I was not about to become a pitiful guinea pig. So I hid my everyday discomfort and loathing behind a mask of normalcy, convincing the doctors that any sign of stress were merely a result of hospitalization. Saya was my support. Looking forward to her nightly visits was the only thing that gave me the strength to overcome my daily torture. Having hope can make an enormous difference in a patient's progress. With the aid of my secret nurse, I recovered at a pace that left the doctors stunned. On the last night before my release, I summoned my courage and asked her,
君はこれからもずっとこの病院に居続けるのかい？
うん。結局パパの手がかりはなかったけど、もう他にいるところもないし、バレそうになるまではいいかなって。
In other words, she had no reason to stay either. I decided to take the plunge, timidly asking,
よかったら僕の家に。
Oh wow. I know I just met you, and this is crazy.
No, don't stop.
家族
We're
は
gonna keep going.
部屋はいくらでも余ってる。人
I
の
wasn't
忍び
gonna
を必要も
finish.
ないし、住み心地もそんなに悪くないんじゃないかと。
ずっとふみのりと一緒に暮らすの？
Wow. I didn't have the courage to ask her what she thought of that, so I hastily offered a deal.
君の父さんのことは代わりに僕が探してあげる。約束するよ。必ず居場所を見つけてみせる。
難しいと思うよ、それ。
Saya said, looking a little embarrassed.
多分パパ、何か悪いことをしてこの病院を辞めたんだと思う。だから警察とかは困るの。なるべくこっそりと探さなきゃいけないし。
頑張るよ。どんなことだってやる。僕は。
He wasn't really being discreet when he asked I forgot what her name was, but that one lady. He just straight up asked her, like, where was he?
Yeah. Unable to control myself, I finally spoke the truth.
さやと離れたくないんだ。
At first she looked bewildered, but after considering it, she said,
少しだけ考えさせて。
That said, she left my room earlier than usual.
Hello?
Oh, sorry. On the day of my release, I managed to smile as I accepted the hideous, foul-smelling celebratory bouquet. The flesh beasts, calling themselves Koji, Yo, and Omi, came to pick me up. They had come to see me any number of times during my stay, but it never got easier to see my old friends change so horribly. My sudden tears of despair drew suspicion, but I managed to explain them as tears of joy. As we walked through to Koji's car, through the halls, lobby, and parking lot, I desperately averted my eyes from the grotesque world and looked for Saya, but she was nowhere to be seen. We could pass.
I stared through the car window at the hospital fading in the distance, praying for a last glimmer of hope. But Saya never appeared. After Koji and the others dropped me off in front of the house I'd grown up in, I took another look at my surroundings. I'd never moved, having lived my entire life in this one house. There had been no other place for me to call home, but now everything had mercilessly changed. As I walked from the gate to the front door, I looked over the garden and trees. I had many memories of childhood there and could feel them being defiled by the twisted, festering shapes before me.
The music sounds nice here.
Yeah, it is. There was nothing familiar left in the house, nothing to evoke fond memories. What I had once called home was now a whole other world.
僕にはもう帰る場所なんてない。
Well, he said something there, but I forgot. I forgot to read it. Ascending to the second floor, I found my room utterly unrecognizable. And sitting on the bed, curled up like an abandoned cat, was Saya. As I stood there in shock, she looked timidly up at me and a tiny, weak voice said,
本当にここにいてもいいの？
How did she find his house?
She found a map that just had his name written on it and an arrow pointing at his house.
She GPS'd it.
Yeah. I responded by sweeping her into my arms, embracing her tightly so that she wouldn't escape. Saya did not resist. Having arrived in front of the Sakisaka house, Omi takes a deep breath to calm her nerves. That's what her name was. What was her boyfriend's name?
Koji.
Alright. Her anger doesn't abate, of course, but she knows that it won't help to be so enraged that she can't even say what she came to say. While waiting for a response from the intercom, she looks over the patch of yard that she can see from outside the gate. Even Omi isn't sensitive enough to complain about other people's housekeeping, but this is beyond the pale. I've never heard that phrase. The grass is growing wildly and there are piles of dead leaves everywhere, and doesn't just look untended, it looks like an uninhabited ruin. It's still light out, but every window has its rain shutters tightly sealed. Omi guesses that they weren't just shut early, but have been closed since morning. So what kind of life is he leading? Even if he no longer has a family, this level of negligence is going too far. And is it just her imagination, or does everything stink like rotten meat? It couldn't be coming from the yard, could it? There's still no response, so she presses the buzzer again and again and again. Finally, after this has gone on for over 10 minutes, Omi loses her patience and opens the cover of the intercom. As she expected, the power has been disconnected. Maybe Funari cares more about not being bothered by newspaper deliveries or solicitors than about receiving the rare guest. But regardless, Omi doesn't presume to know his motivations. With her anger reignited by what she can only see as a lack of respect for others, she roughly pushes open the gate and stomps through the yard to the front door. That was all one sentence. That is... whoops. Hey, whoops. Great, now it's gonna be... oh no, it's not glitched. Given the state of his intercom, she doubts that Fuminori will respond to a knock, so Omi decides to simply open the door and go in, go in shouting, and if the door is locked, she'll just have to. Surprisingly, the doorknob turns easily in her hand, and the enraged Omi finds herself throwing the door open wider than she intended.
I hope they're good enough friends that she could do this.
Her nostrils are instantly assaulted by a choking stench.
Ugh.
何？
As Omi stands petrified, the cowbell hanging from the inside of the door chimes loudly, probably alerting Fuminari to the presence of a visitor. Omi can't believe the voice she just heard coming from the room at the end of the hall. It was clearly inhuman, yet its intonation was too complex to have been made by an animal.
誰かいるの？
I would just, leave. If I opened the door and I heard, a demon saying, "Welcome home," I'd be like, nope, bye.
Just turn around.
There's no response. Instead, she hears the squishy sound of something soft and wet flopping its way deeper into the house.
Oh my goodness.
Finding it difficult to place a meaningful image to the voice she just heard, Omi stares blankly at the empty vestibule. There's nothing inside, not even Fuminari's shoes, which can only mean that he's still outside somewhere wearing them. If Fuminari isn't home, the house should be empty. Then what was that noise just now? Pass. Hello?
Her anger vanished as if it was never there. Leaving the door open so that the cowbell won't ring, Omi sets foot into the hallway. The floor creaks, setting her nerves on edge. Mine are on edge too. Omi herself isn't sure why she's sneaking around like a burglar, but something tells her to make as little noise as possible.
Your audio might have been a bit too loud for a while, because my Skype thing reset for some reason. So yeah, she might have been a little loud, but you should be normal now.
Who, me?
Yeah. I forgot to turn down the Skype volume.
The potency of the stink inside the house makes the whiff she caught outside pale in comparison. It's sickening, like piles of fish guts that have been left to rot. Has food been left to spoil in the kitchen? She also notices a sound coming from the end of the hallway. Stepping gingerly on the creaking floorboards, Omi makes her way to the end of the hallway. She finds rooms to both sides of her, one lit, the other dark, and chooses to look in the lit room.
This music is going in.
It's the kitchen, lit by what must be the only window in the house, not covered by a storm shutter. The sound she heard was a pot boiling on the stove, and on the chopping board next to it lies a butcher's knife and some half-diced carrots. A perfectly normal household scene, with the light of the setting sun making everything the color of overripe, decomposing fruit. There is something terribly wrong, of course. Who was cooking here? And just where did they go?
誰かいないんですか？
Oh my, why would you want to ask his name? Naomi calls, regretting it immediately after she realizes that her voice is shaking uncontrollably.
Maybe she'll be the next dinner.
Oh, gross. As her words echo vainly through the silent house, she begins to feel foolish and defenseless. She just turns around and walks away. Suddenly, she feels something cold seeping through her stockings. She timidly reaches down to touch her feet, her fingertips coming away covered in a viscous olive green slime. The slime is like the filthy water from a tank long clogged with algae and dead fish, and the whole floor is covered with it. It must be the source of the stench. Naomi wishes that she had worn her shoes inside. Manners are now the furthest thing from her mind. Why didn't the hospital have all this viscous material?
Because maybe she cleaned it up.
Before she cooked dinner. When she looks back, ruefully, the way she came, she realizes that her current position is not visible from the entrance. This kitchen must be where that strange voice and those sounds of movement came from. The next room must be the den. As she expected from having seen the storm shutters closed, it's pitch black inside. Naomi wants nothing more than to turn around and leave the house, but that would mean turning her back to the darkness of that room, something which she cannot bring herself to do.
Why doesn't she just walk backwards?
Plot. Moved less by reason than by some irrational compulsion, Naomi sets foot into the living room. What? It is too dark to see anything, and the stink is far worse than ever before. She slides her hand along the wall, feeling for the light switch, finding it much faster than she expected. She flips it on like it's her last hope. Colors. So many colors.
Well, I mean, it's not that bad.
It's modern art.
It's unique. It's a hippie feel.
The purple of entrails, the brown of rotten meat, the crimson of fresh blood, the yellow of fat. What? These colors, and yet more that cannot be described, join the maddening array to cover every inch of the walls, floor, windows, and ceiling. It's like a painter went over the room with megalomaniacal, thank you, honey, precision, leaving not the tiniest portion untouched. The colors say all that needs to be said about the painter's hate, malice, and insanity. Naomi's legs give out from the shock, sending her to the floor. The slime covering the floor immediately soaks her jeans. Its cold tendrils creeping up her legs, crotch, and her neck.
What is this music?
Pass.
Her hand flies to her neck where it is greeted by another drop of chilly slime. It's above her, something is dripping down on her head. Making perhaps the worst decision of her entire life, Omi looks up. The predator clinging to the ceiling, mere moments from leaping upon its prey, she sees it in every detail. Her mouth and nose are sealed before she can scream, and her belly is torn open as something enters to feast on her innards.
Oh gosh.
By the time she feels any of this, Omi is already gone mad. I bit the bullet and tried to take the train, but the rush hour crowds are so bad that I had to get off halfway and walk. I'm running pretty late. I wonder if Saya's worried. I just hope she's not mad. When I enter the yard, I realize that the front door has been left wide open. Light from the living room is seeping out into the hallway, and I hear what sounds like someone smacking their lips, and there's a tantalizing fragrance in the air. Is it Saya? I consider calling out to her, but decide to enter in silence instead. Something smells strange, but not at all unpleasant. The aroma is quite soothing, in fact. It somehow reminds me of Saya's hair. At first, I am surprised by what I see in the living room. The floor is covered with what looks to be some kind of grass, probably the source of the herb-like smell, and there are fruit or vegetable-like balls of various sizes scattered everywhere.
Saya.
Oh my goodness.
Is that what you'd call that? Is that vegetable-like stuff? Saya turns around, her eyes wide with surprise. She then looks away sheepishly like a child caught at some prank.
何を食べてるんだい?
これはその
She stammers, so flustered that I feel a bit bad for her. Remembering that she has never eaten in front of me before, I realize that she must be quite embarrassed. I suddenly feel like I've done something awful, as if I'm a low-life peeping Tom, so she's just been going out in the middle of the night and eating other people. Doesn't she have to stay, like, fed somehow?
I just love how he says that. It reminds her of the smell of her hair. Honey, your hair smells like dead.
Oh, can I have one? Can I have some of that weird green slime?
It looks like Jell-O.
I scoop up the closest fruit thing and pop it into my mouth, ignoring Saya's attempt to wave me off. It has a strange texture. It feels soft and pliable like a peach or pear. When I bite into it with my back teeth, a succulent juice fills my mouth, combined with a strong, sharp fragrance. It's unlike anything I've ever tasted.
何か味付けとか調理してあるのかこれ。
調理っていうことはさばいてからちょっと溶かして食べやすくしただけでほとんど生なんだ。
It's kind of like how a spider eats things. I pick up a different lump, this one consisting of fruity flesh encasing a hard core, tearing a chunk off. In my mouth, I find that it has a similar taste to the last one.
ねえ大丈夫？それって
僕でも食べられる味だ。っていうよりうまいよこれ。
そうなの？
At first, Saya looks dumbstruck, but soon she starts laughing mirthfully.
そうなんだ。ふみのりもこういうのが好きだったんだ。なんだ、あれこれ工夫して頑張ってた私がバカみたい。
Guess what's for dinner every night?
さやっていつもこういうものを食べてたのか。
こんな大物は久しぶりだけどね。
Oh my goodness.
近所の公園とかで取ってくれるやつ。
Yeah, so she has just been going out in the middle of the night and eating some people. There's an impressive nature preserve not far from here. I've never heard of anything about fruits like these growing there, but well, of course, they only look like fruits to me. They're really something else.
ごめんね。一番美味しいところはさっきさやが全部食べちゃった。
Oh, I'm sure you did.
いいよまだ今度だね。でもこれで明日から一緒に食事ができるね。
Yum. Saya seems really happy. I'm happy too, of course. Eating with someone is much more fun than eating alone. It makes the food taste better too.
まだまだいっぱいあるし、食べきれない分は冷やせば2、3日は大丈夫だよ。ちょっと味は。
I have to grab something. Can you read for a second?
Alright, yeah. You want me to just keep going?
Yep.
Alright.
じゃあ早めに片付けておこうか。
Sealing the small fruits in Tupperware and the large ones in pots and bowls, Saya and I store the remaining food in the refrigerator. Thinking of tomorrow's dinner fills me with anticipation. Ooh. Together with Saya, I feel I'm beginning to regain the joy of living little by little. Saya will guide me. With her, I can live on. True Scary Stories Hospital Edition, Chapter 4, The Monster in the University Hospital. Elite University Hospital research student Kason relates his shocking experiences. Will you believe him or not? Strange things started happening at our hospital around the end of last spring. Many times, patients would wake up in the middle of the night screaming about nightmares. They all said they had seen something unbelievably terrifying in their dreams, and many of them had to be sedated before they would sleep again. Some patients even transferred to other hospitals because of it. The weird thing was that all the patients had had exactly the same dream, a dream about some horribly disgusting monster standing by their bed and staring down at them. But the really strange stuff started happening after that. There used to be a lot of stray cats hanging around the campus looking for scraps from the students. One day the cats suddenly started disappearing, and it wasn't that they stopped coming, it was more like they'd vanished from the area entirely. And then people stopped walking their dogs around. According to rumors, it wasn't that the owners were taking their dogs elsewhere, but that the dogs were refusing to go anywhere near the school. Eventually, things started going missing in the hospital. Organs, to be precise. Organs that had been harvested for transplants kept disappearing from where they were being stored. Some people even came close to losing their jobs over it, and it wasn't just 2 or 3 times that it happened. They tried to keep it from the research students, but we heard that it was a lot worse than that. People started spreading rumors that there was something living in the hospital. The janitors would find strange messes that could only have been made in the middle of the night, traces of something that had crawled down the hallway, or weird stains on the walls that seemed to be caused by something dripping through the ceiling. Lots of late-shift nurses talked about hearing strange noises on the same days that patients had screamed about nightmares. And there's one last story, one you can never mention inside the hospital. One day, the obstetrics department went totally crazy. They said that a newborn had disappeared in the night. If it were true, the police would have come and it would have been all over the news, but they say the big shots managed to make it all go away. It's just a rumor, of course. These strange incidents suddenly stopped towards the end of the summer. Now there are almost no patients complaining of nightmares, and the cats have started coming back to campus. But still, what happened in the hospital that summer? Even now, just thinking about it gives me the creeps. I was trying to do that in like a spooky narrator voice, and by that I mean some random guy on YouTube reading a spooky thing.
ダメだ。
This is the third day that they haven't been able to get in touch with Omi. There's no sign of her having returned to her apartment, and even her family doesn't know anything. Her parents have already filed a missing persons report.
まあ、あいつのことだからな。
Alright.
何事もなかったみたいに。
My dogs were going crazy.
Alright, well, you missed them talking about, like, the horror story at the hospital.
The
Where,
ghost
like, yeah, the ghost story where people were, like, seeing monsters, and, like, cats were going missing around it. And organs, and a baby disappeared.
Now, tell me what happened to the slime, though.
The janitor found it and cleaned it up.
Every night?
I guess so, yeah. And he reported and was like, hey man, there's some slime. I don't know where it came from, but it's there. And they were just like, yeah, just clean it up like normal.
だといいけど。
Yo replies with a gloomy expression. She's worried about Omi, of course, but the incident with Fuminari 3 days ago must still be weighing on her mind as well. Pass.
Okay. Yo hasn't seen Fuminori since then, and Fuminori hasn't made any effort to approach them. Four people used to meet in this cafeteria between classes, but now there are only two.
ねえ、トノ君、もう一度考えてみようよ。どこかおもみちゃんの行きそうな場所に心当たりない？
いや、一通りは確かめたしな。
It's a lie, of course. Kyoji knows where Omi planned to go that evening, but he doesn't want to bring Fuminori up in front of Yo. Their awkward silence is mercifully broken by the bell signaling the start of the next period.
じゃあ、俺行くわ。
If Kyoji isn't mistaken, Yo is supposed to have class next period too, but she continues to sit there like she's in a trance. Unable to come up with anything to say, he reluctantly leaves the cafeteria. Both Uomi's disappearance and Yo's depression worry Koji, and both problems lead back to the exact same place.
海のりは一体。
When Aomi went missing, the first thing Koji did was question Fuminori. The last time he'd seen Aomi was just before she stormed off to give Fuminori a piece of her mind, after all. Fuminori had responded with blunt, unequivocal denial and had acted as though he hadn't had the slightest idea why Aomi would have gone to his house. Perhaps that was only natural, as he was unaware that Omi and Koji had witnessed him reduce Yo to tears. In the first place, did Omi actually make it to Fuminori's house? She had been riding a wave of emotions when she left, and might have very well calmed down and changed her mind halfway there. Or perhaps she ran into trouble on the way. Koji concluded, or more accurately, convinced himself that one of these possibilities was the truth, subconsciously denying the one remaining possibility. In other words, the possibility that Fuminori was lying, that he had met Omi and was involved in her disappearance. When questioned by the police, Koji only told the truth about Omi's destination up to the district and train station, maintaining that he had no idea where she planned to go after that. Well, that's weird. That's his girlfriend. You better tell.
Huh?
I said, you better tell everywhere that I go, in case I go missing. He wanted to cooperate with the search, of course, but knew that Omi couldn't have made it to Fuminori's house. Fuminori said it himself, didn't he? In that case, he told the police everything they needed to know. Not wanting to get the still fragile Fuminori involved, he forced himself to accept this flimsy logic. That is ridiculous. But now the conflict has built up inside Koji without his notice. And only formless suspicion towards Fuminori cycles through his mind. Kyoji is in deep thought, paying no attention to his surroundings, but perhaps that is what allows him to catch sight of his friends back through the crowd of milling students. At first, Kyoji assumes that he's headed to the lecture hall, but it soon appears that he is instead going home. Strange, there should be required classes for medical students in the afternoon. Though he is initially surprised, Kyoji's hesitation lasts for only a second. Kyoji follows his friend, taking care to stay far enough behind that he won't be noticed. I don't think he would notice him anyway, in a sea of flesh monsters. Fuminori wasn't
Now let's stop there.
Oh.
It's 40. It's at 41.
Oh.
Alright, well, that's all for today, so thank you for watching. Goodbye. How much is there left?
I
It's
don't
not
know.
too long, you said?
No. A good amount. Probably a couple more videos.
Alright, well, thank you guys for watching, and goodbye.